Grab the popcorn, your wine, your charcuterie board, because you are about to be entertained with some recent random and ridiculous antics involving my wannabe sex life. And don't worry, we'll totally use protection. This is the Lenora Faye Show. Hello, I'm your host, Lenora Faye, and welcome to this episode called I Lost My Car at a Singles Event and My Week on Tinder. You know what they say about long episode titles. So I'm breaking the rules for this episode by discussing something that has recently happened in my life instead of waiting, a year or two. But look, I'm a horny woman in her 40s, and waiting is no longer an option. Now, I am satisfied with the sexcapades of my 20s and my 30s, but I have to admit, I have not had sex with anyone other than myself since turning 40. Now, when did I turn 40? 2.5 years ago at the time of this recording. I know, seriously. By the way, if you are related to me, you may not want to listen to this episode, but I won't turn away an audience, so just so you're warned. For the record, I did not take a vow of celibacy. For a while, I was holding out for a certain American boy, but by the dawn's early light, I decided to move on. Potential fun fact, the last 3 men I've been physically, sexually involved with have all been American, including the infamous one from the very first episode of this podcast, the one titled The Broken Ankle Story, where I lowered my standards. If you have not listened to that episode, I recommend you go listen to that episode. To my knowledge, once you go American, you can go back to Canadian, but for some reason I haven't yet. Side note, if you are interested in applying for the position, any position, stick around until the end of this episode for further instructions. Now I have to remember to give instructions for that. So, let's see. A month ago, from the time of this recording, I was getting ready for bed and I was checking up on the Child for Girls podcast Instagram, which has been going viral since January. And so the app is always opened to my Lenora Faye account. And so I check my messages there, and then I usually switch over to the Child for Girls account, and the 3 of us manage that. And anyway, I was in the process of doing that, and an ad caught my eye, and it was for a singles event. Now, normally on Instagram, I ignore all the ads because, especially these kind of ads, because I don't go out of my way to date, for one, and second of all, I just wasn't interested. Now, there was a specific detail that I'm leaving out. I'm not going to share on this show. But that detail prompted me to message my girlfriends in the first place. If you really want to know what that detail is, you have to message me on Instagram, and I will tell you privately because I'm not going to say it here. But anyway, so I sent it to my friends, and then I was thinking, maybe I should go. I sent it as a joke, just kind of like a ha-ha. By the way, here's a fun fact about where this event is located. But after sending it, I got to thinking maybe I should go. Because I've actually never gone to a singles event before. It's in a fun part of town. And, I'm horny. And I really am starting to feel like I need to put on a blonde wig, put on a lovely dress, and go flirt. I mean, just go out and flirt. Even if that means flirting in my city. So this city where I live has a population of over 1 million people. The actual city, over 1 million people. And yet, I maintain that I don't really connect with people here. It's not, maybe I don't try enough, I'm not sure. I'm happy keeping to myself in the suburbs, to be honest. But, and by the way, here is the Canadian prairies. So I've lived all over this province of Alberta for, over 42 years, lived all over. And I can't say that I feel like I'm one of the people from here, but I'm born and raised. But I just honestly feel more like myself in California. And that's possibly because Canadians flee to California during the winter. All 8 months of it, among other places. Anyway, so I bought a ticket And of course, I had the most fun planning my outfit accordingly. I settled on a gorgeous emerald green dress with pockets from Anthropology. Shout out to my stylist, Jen. And by the way, that dress is posted on my Instagram. And, oh yeah, I have to remember, there's a funny story I have. I'll share later. As I was walking to the event, something funny happened as a result of that dress. So, back to the outfit. I chose my favorite ombre white blonde wig. Shout out to my wig stylist, Amy. And decided to go with minimal makeup. Because after all, I was going to be wearing extremely shiny gold sneakers. And between that and the excellent cleavage that the dress would be giving, my face did not need to do much work. But of course, I did add some gold glitter. I figured that was a tasteful outfit for a 40-year-old non-virgin. And the wig was giving innocent angel vibes. I remember looking at in the rearview mirror, I'm like, the hair, it just flowed. It was just, ugh. I don't know what happened that night. The hair was amazing. Oh yeah, speaking of tasteful outfits, remind me, someday I need to share that story of the time that I wore a collar and a leash to this taboo sex show. Next time. Sorry, I like to tease. So, Friday night of the event. I'm getting ready. It's fun. Music's going, glitter's going. I'm talking to all my wigs in the closet. Of course, I take the mandatory selfie to send to my girlfriends and the one guy friend that I have that was not feeling well. Well, I have more than one guy friend, but this is my closest guy friend, and he wasn't feeling well. Shout out to Frank, my non-stylist, but constant supporter. So, I wasn't sure what vibe I was going for, honestly, despite having the beautiful blonde angel hair happening that night. I just wanted to be comfortable yet chic, because honestly, the thought of hanging out in a crowd of single people who are all there for the sake of potentially making some kind of romantic connection, it was making me just want to stay home and watch TV and just not do this. Now, I am a confident girl who loves to entertain a crowd. If I'm not the entertainment, then I'm more than happy to have the one-on-one intense conversation about life with somebody else in a corner while at the party. I simply don't do small talk very well. But I had low expectations of the event, and I assumed that all the women there were going to look like supermodels, and all the men would just be huddled in a corner, too scared to talk to anyone. So, an outfit that I loved and would make me feel comfortable. So I chose to take my car because I figured if the vibe was lame, I could leave after an hour. And that was my backup plan. And of course, like all good backup plans, there's a snag. So in this case, snag number 1, it was hockey playoffs. So the NHL, for those of you who are outside of North America, this is a huge deal to Canadians and possibly 3 Americans. So our rival hockey city, the Edmonton Oilers, was playing in the playoffs that night. And I live in the city of Calgary, by the way. And clearly there was enough people from Edmonton or living in Calgary or in Calgary for that night because there was no parking. All the bars and patios were packed and I just couldn't find anywhere to land. Second snag is that the side streets I thought of maybe checking out were all under construction. So suddenly I'm in a completely different area, it seems like, trying to park the car. So, but it's fine. It's a nice night. I like to walk. My outfit's good. I figured extra walking, no big deal. So I did park, checked my hair, made sure the dress was straight, everything was good, and off I go. So I get about 3 steps, and then there's this car that's slowing down as I'm walking. And a bunch of young guys stick their head out the window and they start shouting, "Hey," at me. So I turn and give them a smile and they start giggling, seriously giggling. And then they drive off. And of course I start to laugh because why not? It was cute. But the funny thing is Canadians are generally reserved. So that sort of thing doesn't usually happen to me unless I'm in San Francisco or, that one time in Denver. But anyway, nope. I was not mad. So I continue walking, and I have about, 4 or 5 blocks to go, and I realize that I really don't recognize this part of town anymore. Not that I hung out there much, but I it was kind of like, I felt like I was traveling, honestly. So I'm looking at everything, buildings, people, the patios, everything. When I walk, I don't look at the sidewalk, I look around. And so I happened to notice that there was one guy that was coming straight towards me. He's walking really fast, but he's staring at the sidewalk. And he's trying to pass a group of guys that are, walking the same direction, but he's just like about to hit me. And I didn't veer off the path, and I'm thinking, okay, he needs to look up like right now, otherwise we're going to crash. And so he does look up, but he looks up enough just to stop at my boobs, and then he jumps to the side into the group of men that he's trying to pass. So I keep laughing. I basically laughed from my car to the event. Anyway. Oh, right. So now I'm at the story that I really want to tell you guys. So I'm almost at the bar. And I noticed that there's a bit of a line. So, of course, because everyone's trying to get on the patios. Not for the event, but for the game. So I'm standing in the queue. And now I'm late. I'm about, I think 15 minutes late. But I have my ticket, so I know it'll be fine. And I'm standing behind a couple. And they're chatting away and whatnot. And then it's their turn to get let in somewhere. And the man turns around and motions for me to go in front of them because they're going to be waiting for a bit to get onto the patio. Now, I would have considered this polite, except the entire time he was staring at my cleavage. Can't blame him, but he was. And he's talking to me, but he's actually just looking at my boobs and saying, you can go on ahead and motioning. Like, he did not look up to my neck, to my feet, nothing. Like, he was just talking to my boobs. Now, at this point, I've got zero poker face, zero straight face. I'm trying to swallow my laughter. And so I thanked him and his wife, spouse, whoever. And, so I went on ahead and went upstairs into the atrium. That guy did not look at my face once. Anyway, again, I'm not mad about it. I'm aware of what this outfit was doing. Because, a girl has to have fun. So anyway, I make my way upstairs to the atrium, and the event is packed. I get my ticket scanned, and now it's time for me to, I guess, mingle. So I go to the bar to order a beer, and I rarely drink because I'm a lightweight and I'm driving, but this is a social event, so a drink must be in hand. So I chit-chat with a few women and one guy as I'm waiting at the bar, and I'm asking, like, have you come to these events before? What's any tips? And again, keep in mind, everyone's a complete stranger to me. And later I found out that people would come, with like wingmen, wingwomen, whatever. Everyone was single, but they'd planned to meet up with their friends. I did not know that was a thing, but that's how people were navigating this type of situation. I call it a situation. That's how little I go out. This was a situation, people. It was a singles event. Oh, believe me, it was a situation. Anyway, so I am out of my comfort zone at this point. But I am not shy about going around the room and introducing myself to everyone and anyone who is not already engaged in a conversation. And so that's what I did for the first hour. I walked around and talked to people. Believe it or not, I do like to talk. So I had beer in one hand, bouncing around the room, saying hello. Of course, the women loved the dress, and so that's an easy opener because we end up talking about fashion and outfits and all that stuff. And the men, well, if they noticed the shoes, that's what they commented on. And then I follow up with, so, do you come to these events often? Yes? Cool. Any luck? Great. Well, enjoy your night. I'm going to continue mingling. Zero spark. Oh my God. Zero spark. So, oh my God. As I'm recalling this, I'm going, yeah, I just wanted to go home. So that was the first round of the room. And then I found a window seat and I was feeling kind of humid underneath the wig. And I just really wanted to go, but I'd only been there for an hour. So I'm standing there just surveying everything. And I noticed one intense looking guy who's standing against the wall way across the room. And I figure, well, he's security because he's very rigid and just standing there. So I did a second round, went around the room again, looking for different faces. And then I ended up having a conversation with this one girl, and I was kind of lamenting to her that I was, not really sure what to do. And she suggested that I find someone who catches my eye enough to go and chat with. And if it doesn't happen the second time around, just go. So that's what I decided to do. And I realized that all the women at this event were straight, at least for that night. So I stopped trying to hit on women and decided to focus on men for this round of mingling. And honestly, none of the men there held my attention, except for the one that I kept seeing across the room. But I wasn't going to hit on the security guard, because that's not what he's there for. After my last attempt, I passed the security guy, and then I stopped and I just said, "So, are you security?" And he looked at me and he said, "No." Oops. So, of course, we ended up having a conversation for the next hour. Discussing hockey, human rights, feminine, masculine roles in society, small talk. What did I tell you earlier? I'm going to be in the corner having an intense conversation at a party. If I'm not the entertainment, that's what I'm going to be doing at a party. Finding the one person I can discuss life with. Turns out this guy was former military. So his standard practice is to stay, back to the wall, able to observe the entrance, constantly scanning the room, and totally made sense. Like, no wonder I thought he was security, because he was giving off that vibe. And that is when I had my epiphany that in the rare instances where I am attracted to a man, it's always the ones who are able to protect me. Not just physically, but there's intellectual protection, there's financial protection, there's many different kinds of protection, I realized. And a lot of it, though, has to do with physical protection. And those are the ones that I'm drawn to. And I'm a strong, capable woman. Yes, I'm 5'3", but I am not easy to pick up in any regard. So, it's for me, it's a really strong presence that I'm attracted to, which I don't come across very often. That was a massive epiphany for me, but that's a whole other podcast episode. Anyway, we're talking for an hour, and I got the impression that this particular gentleman was in the market for a wife. He didn't have kids. He was older than me, and he was clearly ready to be husband material, which was sweet. And I'll say, with a side of fatherhood, if he was with the right woman, and those are his words, not mine. Well, kind of my words, but of course, we had the conversation, do you have kids? Because I did tell him, I am a podcaster, and one of the things I do talk about, not on this particular show, but previous one, is about choosing not to have children. And of course, that led us into a very long discussion about things. So I knew that, he would not be classified as a child-free person. He's currently childless. Anyway, I, on the other hand, not having kids, I am in the mood for a sexy 30-something-year-old. I'll put it that way. For fun and to add a sexy spark in my life as I continue to pursue my dreams. So that is where I actually am in my life. I'm looking for younger and fun and lots of stamina, because I need it. Or they need it to deal with me, especially after 2.5 years. While this guy, he had my attention just by conversation alone, I was not hitting on him. He wasn't hitting on me. We were just having really intense conversations, and I loved that. But I did ask him if he would walk me to my car, because it was getting late. The sun had set by this point, and I realized I did not exactly remember where I parked. Seriously. I had finished my one beer at this point. He agreed. He agreed to walk me to my car, which I thought was really nice. And so we left. Now, for all intents and purposes, it was a perfect Friday evening. This was May, and so the city was finally in spring bloom, warm air. People were... I don't know how the game ended. I didn't care, because it's not my team. But anyway, it was, the city was buzzing. It was nice. So we chatted about random things as we walked along, and normally I am very alert because I'm always by myself, but this guy was clearly on high alert at all times, so I could just chat away and not pay attention to anything. I remember I pointed in the vague direction of where I thought the car could be, and we had looked at the Google map, and I said, I think I'm over here. So again, he was going to walk me to my car, and then he'd go back, or I would drive him back to the event because I had to pass it, and it was all fine. Well, we've been walking for several blocks at this point, and then I'm like, okay, I'm parked down over here, so we continue walking. And then I realized, I guess I did not park on this street, because there was no car. No big deal. He's like, okay, let's walk another block. So we walked another block. and down the street and no car. And so then we're like, okay, maybe one block over. So, we're still chatting away and okay, there's no car on this street. Okay, cool. How about the next block? Well, what else are we going to do? So we go through every block and then down another street. And then we run out of streets because it becomes a major roadway and there's no way that nowhere to park. And obviously now we've gone too far. We've been walking for 30 minutes now and my car's not there. So he says to me, "Are you sure you have a car?" I start laughing. And I appreciate that he's trying to keep the mood light because I am starting to quietly panic. It's very dark now. People are clustering around corners. But I have my newly appointed private security guard with me. So as I'm walking out into traffic while I'm studying Google Maps, trying to remember where the hell I parked, he's pulling me back. He's making sure that people who are asking for change or whatever are not going anywhere near me. And I'm trying not to cry because I am feeling completely lost and I do not know where my Mazda CX-5 is. And then it occurred to both of us, maybe it got stolen. So I recognize none of the streets. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone, and that's not a typical feeling for me. And he's going, how do you lose a car? He's definitely questioning my sanity, who am I, whatever, but he's not being a dick about it. And at this point he could have been, but he wasn't, and I kept telling him I really appreciated that. Above all, we were trying to find my car and he was trying to keep me from crying. So now 45 minutes have gone by and we're just walking down any street. We narrowed it down to it can only be in this particular section. So now we're just thoroughly going through all of every street, not the lanes, obviously, but every street and avenue. Pushing the panic button on my car, or my key fob. Nothing, not a sound. And again, he knew that I was starting to get upset because I went from chatty to quiet, and he's trying everything to make me laugh, including, recommending we can steal all these cars just so I can get home. And, again, I appreciated his effort, but now I'm tired, he's tired, and I have no idea what to do. So now it's been an hour. Kid you not, an hour. And I'm silently going, okay, well, I got to do something. We're either calling me an Uber. I can't believe I've lost my car. That's my security blanket. I'm done. Don't know what to do. We did figure out that, hey, this is a great story that you will be able to tell your buddies and I'll be able to podcast about. So, we agreed on that. And then I'm like, okay, look, let's just go down this one last street. If we can't find it, then we'll just go our separate ways and I'll call a cab. We're walking and I'm pressing my key fob and guess what? We hear something. So I stop. I'm like, oh my God. And now I recognize where I am. I'm like, there's my car. I see the car. I'm like, oh my God, it's my car. And sure enough, it was. Guess what? It was where I left it. Who would have thought? So, okay. And by then I recognized the street. So I think, I know we had gone down the street before, but it was a little further than I intended. So, yeah. Anyway, I turn around and give the guy a giant hug. I am so relieved. So relieved. And he's relieved because now he can get away. He can go back to his evening and, forget about the crazy woman who left her car, for who lost her car. Well, he didn't call me crazy and I wasn't crazy, but I was starting to feel like I was crazy. So anyway, those were my words, not his. So of course I said I'll drive you back to the bar because now it's after 11 o'clock, but the night's still young for some people. And I actually offered to drive him home, but he said, well, he lived in the opposite direction of where I was going. But he's like, I'll take your number. And I was thinking, okay, but why? So I drove him back to the bar. And as I was driving, he did say that, men do stupid things that may seem weird to women, which I thought was a sweet attempt at, hey, lady, sure, you lost your car, but we men have to climb into shopping carts and roll them down the hill for no reason. So, again, he was a gentleman. I really appreciated that. So we exchanged numbers, and he sent me a text while he was still in my car, and I figure, he was probably making sure that I didn't lose his number. And then he asked me if I remembered where I lived, and I said yes. And, of course, I had to laugh about that. I drove home. And then I sent him a text. I said, just to let you know, I found my house. Thank you for being a gentleman about this evening. And we haven't texted since, but, maybe he lost my number. That was my one and done experience with the singles event. Because after that experience, over it. But again, my epiphany was that I gravitate towards, maybe this is a common thing, I don't know, let me know, but I gravitate, if I'm attracted to a man, later on I realize it's someone that could protect me. So originally I was going to end this, this would be the end of the podcast episode, and I was going to have this whole spiel about how nice it was when a man makes you feel safe, especially when it's a stranger, which was totally the case for me here. But a week or so later, I decided to join Tinder at my first attempt at dating apps. And so I'm going to share that with you because we need to end with more humor. So the whole point of this is that I did need to try something different for an experience and just to see, where my intuition is at and all that stuff. And also realizing I do like my car. So what I have learned is that I'm not into singles events. I'm not into dating apps. I am horny as fuck, but I need to get a person's vibe first. And while in-person meeting is superior to, meeting on an app, this whole event thing feels so transactional. It felt so transactional for me and it felt forced and I'm just not here for it. So, shout out to all the lovely people that I chatted with that night. And, I know I've made some new friends, podcast listeners to the show, potentially. It was, and the event, was nice, but it's just not for me. It's just not for me. I realize I would rather meet a random person in an office setting and be totally caught off guard by his awesome vibe and then I would want to, explore that further. By the way, that actually did happen to me a few months ago. Turns out the guy is significantly younger than I am, but hey, maybe one day he'll reply to my Instagram DM. Also, this whole thing has been a reminder to me that I am socially shy. Once we're alone, I'm definitely not shy. It's just everything else leading up to that point. And I don't know, I gotta work through that, I guess. So now onto the Tinder story. Which reminds me, I have to pull up the app because it's hard for me to explain this. I'm just going to read you what happened because that's funny enough and you guys will laugh. So now it's about 3 weeks ago at the time of this recording. And this was a result of some conversations that I was having with my girlfriends, my married girlfriends. And, I've always avoided dating websites and apps. And the truth is because I went to an online high school. And I was in high school before Wi-Fi existed. So we're talking dial-up. We're talking DSL. There was no photos. There was no social media. If I remember correctly, we had a virtual high school, but it came with private chat rooms. And the chat rooms were recorded for classes, but then you could have private chat rooms. Now, this is like dial-up. This is slow modem. This is not high speed internet. So there's no photos. But we could have private rooms that weren't recorded. So, you'd pair up with someone and go have cyber sex in a school chat room. It was actually really weird when I think about it. But that's what it was. That was my online experience as a teenager, right? So anyway, my point of bringing that up is I had that experience for months, and then I meet these people that I had cyber sex with, like my classmates, because we're all like a bunch of horny teenagers, and then you meet them in person and you're like, oh my god, what the heck was I thinking? So that immediately turned me off of online dating before online dating was really a thing. So of course the thought of using Tinder was major ick for me, major ick. But after having many discussions with my married girlfriends about this, I decided to give it a try. And I had zero expectations, which I was right about. Still have, I've had the experience, it met my zero expectations. But again, I want to end this episode with another funny story. And so I'm going to read you guys my Tinder profile and share some results. So bear with me here. I'm going to pull up the app because I still have it. And I realize I have not replied to the one person. I'll get to that in a second. So, okay. Most of you know me as Lenora Faye, the online persona who has a bunch of different hairstyles. So in person or in real life, I generally, well, of course, for events and stuff like what I just described, I do like to put on a wig. But I chose photos that represent my less glam appearance, like my natural everyday appearance, which is not in a wig, it's in my natural hair. Actually, most of you probably don't even know what that looks like because I don't post that, really. So anyway, so I didn't go with an ultra glam Tinder profile because that's not who would be showing up. But I did have that like buried, and so anyway, so there's a selection of photos, and I chose a photo of me that represents how I look naturally. And now here's my bio. Okay, so it's 231 characters. About me: podcast host and activist, never married, child-free by choice. I only wear dresses, do not want pets. I have 30 wigs in my glam closet. I have 30 wigs in my glam closet for podcast purposes. Smiley and moody, which is totally me. Like to feel protected. Into coffee dates and casual fun. Texting is hot. First attempt at Tinder. So that's my about me. Now I'm again not here for a soulmate. So there's prompts that they give you and you can fill them in. And so I chose 3. So here's what mine say. And again, this is for those of you that have no idea what a profile is. This is what people can click on my photo and see what I wrote. So first prompt: my weird but true story is I said no to a robbery note when I worked as an office manager for a bakery. Don't tell me what to do. And then I posted a winky face. By the way, I do tell that story in my podcast as well. So there's that episode about saying no to a robbery note. You guys can go listen to that if you have not listened to it already. Okay. Next prompt: life is too short to ... And I wrote, have children. Of course I wrote that. I thought it was funny. Last prompt. It says, I want someone who ... And I wrote, has stamina for a very horny 42-year-old female and who can be a gentleman about it. And that's very true. Incredibly true. So what did I write? Pronouns, I just put she because I don't feel like explaining the she, they thing that I typically use. 5'3" height, which is true. What are my relationship goals? Looking for short-term fun. Very true. Relationship type, I wrote open to exploring, whatever that means. Family plans, I don't want children. COVID vaccine. Yes, I'm vaccinated. I got vaccinated because in order for me to travel to the U.S., I had to be, so I did. My love style is thoughtful gestures, which is true. Communication style, big texter. Yeah, and that's what this whole thing ended up being. So, by the way, my week on Tinder, like technically I'm still on it because I knew I needed to keep this open to share for this podcast episode because there's something else I want. Some of the profiles that I came across I have to share with you guys without, I'm not like giving anybody secrets away or anything. But, okay, so hang on. How do I explain this? Again, living in Canada, there's not a whole lot to do here. Not really. So the typical profiles, and this may be for anybody, for any place in the world, but everyone either is holding a giant fish because now I live on the Canadian prairies, but a lot of guys here love to fish. Okay, cool. I grew up fishing as a kid. You know, it was something I would do with my aunt and uncle during summers when we go to British Columbia, which is the westernmost province of Canada. So mountain climbing is standard. Everyone's standing in front of a mountain. Fair enough. They're an hour. The Rocky Mountains are an hour from where I live. I'm going to the mountains tomorrow. So, no big deal. But I'm not an animal person. I'm indifferent about pets, right? Like, I don't have pets, don't care to have pets. I'm glad if you love your pet, but hold it, like posting photos of you covered in cats or a dog is not going to turn me on. Let alone posting you holding a giant fish. Now I realize, and then you got your gym people, which is cool. Like, I think guys just have the worst possible situation when it comes to posting photos, because they were all awful. And no knock on the men. None of them did anything. So I ended up liking. Okay, so is it swiping left if it's a no and swiping right if it's a yes? Because I messed that up a few times. But anyway, I ended up liking out of 800, because you'll get a list of who likes you. And I was told by one of my female single friends, shout out Emma, that if you're new, everyone will like you, so you'll get like 800 matches. And that's what happened. I got 800 matches. So I looked through 800 people, and I was like, there was three that I consciously liked, and then one that I accidentally liked who had liked me back. Well, no, they all liked me first, and then that's the list I went through. I liked 3 of them back, and then one I accidentally swiped the wrong way. He wasn't a no, but because I didn't know if he was living in my city, I just kind of left it, but I accidentally hit the wrong button. And so that was a match, and I'm like, oh shit. And guess what? That's the one person who messaged me. Like immediately. He was younger, huge guy, like 6'4". He was cute. I just didn't, choose him because, there was an accident. Anyway, he still texts me hello. I call him fuckboy because that's exactly what it was. It was complete fuckboy energy. And we spent a week dirty texting each other because that was fun. I was totally fine to meet up with him and see if there was a vibe and then, follow through with that. But here's the thing. You gotta use protection. Yes, I'm protected. I have an IUD, but I don't care. Dude's got to wrap it up. If I can't get confirmation you're going to do that, I'm not meeting you. So he just stayed fuckboy texting, and we did that for a week. And actually, I still get messages from him. But I've left him there because a week was enough. Anyway, so of course, like the one person I accidentally swipe the wrong direction on, that's the one who messages me. So that was my week on Tinder. But here's the it's not for me. I can't get into it. I really can't. But I did want to share this with you guys because I'll end the episode this way because I thought it was funny. I clearly said, child free and not having kids, right? So I got some messages from people, from men. The standard, hey, whatever. Hello, hi, you're beautiful. Thanks. Appreciate it. But no. And then, here's one. Now, this is what I'm going to be using for promotion on my Instagram. So you may have seen this already. So here's the message I get from one guy. I'm going to get a dog and just stay single. Women aren't really interested in having children and a family anymore anyways. Most women just want to party and have fun, and I'm really more of an introvert. Have to accept that times have changed. Women don't want committed relationships. They want to be strong and independent. Dude, I thought I was clear on my profile. Like, why did you like me and then, expect me to like you back and you give me that attitude? Oh my God. So shout out to all the men holding fish and what I was really curious. I really wanted to see what the females are like what they post. I guess I could do a switch and do a search for females, but I'm just not into it anymore. The vibe is past. I have now recorded this podcast episode and we'll lock this away and you guys can laugh and tell me your dating app experiences. I'm going to go to the mountains and maybe just watch a guy, catch a fish in real life and see what happens. Oh my Lord. Yeah, did I go in with a positive attitude? I was positive this wasn't the way for me to meet people. Like, even, look, I was just looking for a hookup, but it just gives me too much of an ick factor. I need to feel the vibe. I need to know that up front. The whole thing is transactional. But I needed this experience. I did not know. I did not know. Now I know. I have some context. So I'll shut this down for a bit and fingers crossed that somebody in my city is available and my type to hook up with for a while because I need that. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. I hope it made you laugh at some point. And feel free to share, your stories if you have any. You can find me on Instagram at @IamLenoraFaye. There'll be ways to support the show in the show notes below. And yeah, it's been a while. How do I sign off on these things? Right. I'll chat with you in the next episode.